thank Larry and Steve and Carmen for bringing me to El Paso as a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin. You have a really nice campus, so and that's hard to say, but it's true. I also want to let you know that I'm going to be talking. This is a talk that I'm giving, which is ongoing research, and it's based on a qualitative research that I'm hoping to complete before publication. And some of this information is based on my book that came out earlier this year on information, intelligence, and national security policy, which was a book that I did with Susan Moret, who is a librarian and is not with the intelligence community at all. And so I'm going to focus on intelligence personnel who basically what you've heard through this conference as outside looking in. And I'm going to discuss inside looking out. And that is intelligence personnel who are going or want to become academics. Or as I like to say, going from the dark side to the mellow side. All right, that was a joke. All right, so because as Intel personnel, and I say this from someone with over 3 decades of experience as an intelligence analyst, working for several agencies, that the switch from a closed community, i.e. the intelligence community, to the academic community poses some ethical dilemmas, which may not be recognizable on the outside, and maybe those in the inside don't even realize it. So this is kind of an awareness. And I didn't really start thinking about this topic until I was invited to speak here. And then as I started preparing and writing, I was thinking, wow, I have another book here. So this is kind of an ongoing research. But right now, what I want to just set the stage is by saying that right now we have in the U.S. government roughly 5 million individuals with security clearances. And if you take 5 million individuals with security clearances and those that have what we would call top secret or at least TS, right? Because you have confidential, you have secret, and you have top secret. Of the 5 million that have security clearances, 1.5 hold top secret clearances. So now of 1.5 million individuals with top secret clearances working for the federal government, and that includes contractors, people who are directly working for the U.S. government, private outside. So it's just people that have been cleared to work for the government. That's 1.5 million individuals with top secret security clearances. Now, when you get a security clearance, you sign a form. And then that form is called SF-312. SF stands for standard form, typical governmentese. And the standard form 312 is a contractual agreement between the U.S. government and people who will be working for the U.S. government, either government employees or contractors, in which they agree never to disclose classified information to an unauthorized person. When you get a security clearance, it is based on trust. And if you decide to break that trust, then you're going to be held responsible. You decide you want to publish something on WikiLeaks, you can face up to $10,000 and prison. So it's very serious when you're taking information. And of course, this doesn't even add to when we have what is called need to know. just because you have a security clearance, if you don't have a need to know, that does not give you access to that information. So when we look at SF 132 and you sign it, you take that very seriously. Now, if we look at Washington, D.C., according to the 2010 United States Census, U.S. people, okay, over the age of 25 with a graduate degree or professional degree are all located in and around Washington, D.C. This includes the suburbs of Arlington County, Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia, Montgomery County in Maryland, the District of Columbia, Howard County in Maryland, and Fairfax. So, of the rankings of counties of the most educated people in the United States, it is not Silicon Valley, as you would think, but it is in and around the suburbs, the commuters of Washington, D.C. And for example, Arlington County, which is number one, 36.7% have at least a graduate or professional degree, right? And that's the most educated county in the United States. Bringing up the top six is Fairfax, where 30% of the county residents have a graduate or professional degree. Now, if you look at the top U.S. counties with residents with undergraduate degrees or higher, but just with a bachelor's degree, 7 of the top 8 counties in the country are in and around Washington, D.C. Leading the list, Arlington County. Arlington County, if you live in Arlington County, which is where the Pentagon is located in Arlington County, 70% of the residents have undergraduate degrees. That is, again, the most educated county in the United States. The only county that breaks up the top 8 that is not in and around Washington, D.C. is my hometown, and you can tell from my accent, New York, right? New York ranks 7th, and it is the lone county in the top 8 that has the most undergraduate degrees. Now, why am I giving you the statistic? I'm giving you the statistic because I'm not saying most or all work in the U.S. intelligence community, but you don't have to work in the U.S. intelligence community to the odds that within the 1.5 million who have top secret clearances, who work in one of the most educated counties, 7 of the top 8 educated counties, that you may work in the intelligence community, or you may work in the national security community. So, and now we get into, and just from a distance, it may not have to do with intelligence, because now what I'm talking about is information. And we heard a talk yesterday by Aaron as far as when information becomes intelligence, and I'm not going to get into that, but that's something I address in my book with Susan Moret. But information, when it can be determined as intelligence, and then you take this intelligence, and if it is so-called intelligence, and it becomes classified, well, then it all of a sudden has a need to know, and it takes on much greater importance, right? So we look at that. Now, if in fact you have these intelligence professionals outside of your work, you are more likely to go and get your graduate degree. The U.S. government is very generous in sending you to go get your master's degree. As a matter of fact, I took advantage of it 3 times. So I got 3 master's degrees. But you know what? I'm not unusual, because if you're an intel analyst and you want to get a professional degree or a graduate degree, and the government is going to subsidize some of it, you're going to go to school. So we look at, and then, but this is now when we are, and there's a whole nother lecture I have, presentation on information and intelligence and understanding the difference between the two. But we're going to push that aside, and I'm going to give you an ethical dilemma. all right? Because if you're going to talk about ethics, and I am dealing with applied ethics, all right? Hold on, please.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I'm dealing with applied ethics. In dealing with applied ethics, let's look at this case study, or ethical dilemma. Frank Zane is a signals intelligence analyst for DIA. He has been at his current position for the last 10 years. He enrolled in evening classes at the local university, and his national security course this semester is European Radical Terrorism. Tonight, the professor is focusing on a particular terrorist organization. The group, the Wazambi Bagel, that's my New York heritage. The Wazambi Bagel is unknown to the public, and the U.S. government refuses to mention it for several reasons that intersect national security and politics. Nevertheless, earlier this week, WikiLeaks published a 28-page, highly classified national intelligence estimate detailing the organizational chart, missions, and objectives of those Wazambi Bagel. The group remains classified and officially remains, quote, non-existent by U.S. Government officials. Frank, at his job, has been tracking this group for the last 3 years through their communication network. Tonight, Frank's class is assigned to read the NIE that he contributed to writing as part of in the Intelligence Community Project, and to discuss it in class. Frank has an ethical dilemma. The NIE, although available on the internet, remains classified by the federal government. And as with most leaked classified documents found on the internet, the federal government neither confirmed nor denied the validity of this report. Some students in the class know Frank works in the intelligence community. Should Frank participate in the discussions of a leaked document, thus giving credence to its validity? Or should Frank refuse to take part in tonight's class, thus the possibility of maybe adding to the credibility that this is a leaked government document? As intelligence studies becomes more prominent on campuses and political science, government, international relation departments, how should, and this is the main question, how should formally classified information be used in academia? According to some scholars, any class of, and this is where the bridge where academics and practitioners, because according to some scholars, any classified material on the internet should be considered open source. And if it's available to anyone and everyone, so you should use it. However, as everyone knows, not everything on the World Wide Web is accurate and true. Nevertheless, anyone connected to the internet can download an excess of documents at their fingertips. So, as a nation, then, we are clearly divided on the role of secrecy in a democratic society. Secrecy limits access to official information, and it impedes on the public participation of the deliberative process and inhibiting or preventing the accountability of government officials for their actions. So there's not a universal consensus on a measure of secrecy that is justified and necessary to protect authorized national security activities. This would include intelligence collection, military operations. People that favor freedom of speech are listed under the First Amendment of the Constitution as the rule of law and the right of privacy, just like the Fourth Amendment as unreasonable search and seizure. This is something that if we are going to limit Frank Zane's ability to access this information, well then, where do we draw the line between Frank Zane as a U.S. citizen and Frank Zane as an intelligence professional? And where do you turn that on and where do you turn that off? Because he's not really disclosing information as said in Standard Form 312, but everyone else knows about it. So when we look at it, not only do we have walls that exist between government and its people, but there exists, in my opinion, a wall of separation between government agencies and departments We look at the 9/11 Commission, and it concluded in its final report that excess of secrecy left the nation needlessly ill-prepared for the threat of terrorism, and that it obstructed communications within the government, and that it left the public ignorant of vital interest and importance. So how do you handle classified material in a non-classified world? Is it realistic to expect avoidance of such material when leaked classified documents, should they be encouraged or to further a scholar's ability to support or debunk a proposed academic thesis, much less the public's right to make decisions and support an administration's foreign or domestic policy? The study of intelligence national security is a multi-billion-dollar industry, both inside and outside of the government. Consequently, to support this industry and the collection, analysis, production of knowledge is an exponential growth in academic institutions offering intelligence studies. However, with the chase for money by universities comes responsibility, or does it? When an educational institution accepts government funding to conduct an unclassified study, do researchers have an obligation to ignore leaked or publicly available classified intelligence? Without using this material, it could make the research inconsequential at best or irrelevant. However, for the government to use such research with the leaked material could result in a hypocritical consumer at best and an enabler of additional leaks at worst. Clearly, the government avoids such ethical quandaries by granting security clearances to those researchers working on government contracts. However, in the age of Edward Snowden's leaks of highly classified material, the only assurance anyone can make is those with a security clearance that you're going to get the information first. So let's back up and delineate intelligence from information. Because sometimes when we have leaked intelligence, it could be the government that's doing the leak. We look no further than 1996. In 1996, U.S. Defense Department, smarting under allegations of a cover-up regarding the Gulf War syndrome, placed 2,000 pages of classified intelligence documents and satellite photos on GulfLink, their Defense Department website. According to the February 2000 Government Accounting Office, the Department of Energy had inadvertently released almost 15,000 pages of restricted data or formerly restricted data. So what happens if the leak is not by Edward Snowden, but it's actually by the government itself? Once it becomes available publicly, you can't call it back. So, in addition to the loss of computers, hard drives, or portable computers containing sensitive classified information, we know the Secret Service just lost the floor plans to the Trump Towers. Does that mean if I was able to get a hold of those floor plans, and I'm looking as an architectural industry expert, would I not be interested in those floor plans? Not from a security standpoint, just the fact that it has the floor plans of Trump Tower. So we look at that, and I'll just move on because I don't have much time. All right, 1 minute. Okay. So I have two other ethical dilemmas. And it's also the fact, because what I'm getting to is, what about the intelligence professional who ends up leaving and going into academia? Now it's not the student, but it's the professor, the teacher. Because if there's material on the internet, and I want to use that material on the internet, but it's classified and it has been leaked, knowing that every university is using that material, am I not putting my students behind because I choose to ignore that material because I know that I don't use classified material because that would be wrong? But then how does that benefit the students? And so I have a couple of ethical dilemmas that I kind of play this out. And with that, thank you.